everyone. I'm Myrna Haskell, Executive Editor of Sanctuary Magazine. This is an online publication for women that empowers and inspires with compelling content. This month, we've published our 4th annual Celebrating Autism Awareness issue. And this morning, my guest is Ann Marie Sullivan. She is founder and CEO of Spectrum Works. This is a New Jersey-based nonprofit organization that is dedicated to raising awareness about those on the autism spectrum, building inclusive workforces, and helping those on the spectrum with job readiness and career development. Good morning, Ann Marie. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
And I want to thank you for being our sponsor, and I want to thank you ahead of time just for everything that you're doing for the autism community. I want to let listeners know before we get into questions that this particular year we decided to focus on that next step, independent living. And so Spectrum Works' mission to help folks get from that more sheltered educational space into the workforce is very, very important and a really good alignment for us. And I also wanted to mention that I noticed on your homepage, Ann Marie, that you had a pretty daunting statistic, and that is that approximately 80% of those on the spectrum are unemployed. And I think that the entire community, it should be a concern and something people get behind. So my first question for you is, throughout your experience with Spectrum Works, what do you think are 1 or 2 of the biggest hurdles that those on the spectrum have in terms of entering the workforce for the first time?
It depends on when we're talking about entering the workforce, because if they come through at a young age, as through our program, they can start at 16 years old, and some could even start earlier at 14, depending on the job type, and or if they haven't had the opportunity to participate in a transition program at their high school, because then they're older when they graduate. Because I know you said you have people who listen to you outside of the US, but here in the US, you could stay in school till 21. So I would say is they come, and I would think is independence. I would say is that was one of the biggest hurdles, is when they come to us normally or when they go in the workforce. It depends if they've had any type of work experience. So when they come to us, it's their first work experience normally. So they sometimes lack independence. But very quickly, from day one, we start to work on that. And with opportunity and an integrated environment, they are able to pick it up pretty quickly and become as independent as possible, as quickly as possible. That's what we try to sort of talk about. The next thing I would say is communication and social skills as it relates to work, because that's what's important for us. And so, although they're taught in school, in a school setting, it is not always the same thing when you come into the workplace. It's the real world. So that's what when I go back to, and I'll keep reiterating this fact, is that I really believe that starting as young as possible, even if it's just 1 or 2 days a week while still in high school, really helps with those what you learn in school and then applying it in the real world, which we can talk about later on, but about what exactly does Spectrum Works does and what our program is. And you'll see how we integrate those skills in the real workforce, which I believe really makes a big difference.
And I think you hit upon something really important there too, which is the school environment, and they're learning some of the things, but it's not as much of a focus, I don't think, self-advocacy, because they do have a lot of those accommodations and resources and things, some of which they may not have in the workforce, right? So that's sort of that bridge, as you folks call it, from point A to point B. It's so important to try to get some of those things early on, but then if you don't, that training that you receive before you actually make the leap, I think is super, super important. So here's what I wanted to ask you about, because I love what you're doing with your internship program. So I'm hoping you can talk a bit about those. They are unique in that you partner with companies, and that the students don't just get those on-the-job training skills and a feel for the job, but they also have an opportunity later to actually have employment. So if you can talk a bit about your internship programs, that would be great.
I'll just give you a round sort of 360 view of what our program is, and then I'll focus on the partner companies and how we work. But what our mission is to give job training and employment to high school students and young adults with autism by building inclusive workforces at companies. And the way that we do that is we work with high schools. We have the students come to our program as part of their normal day, And we also work post-high school. So we have a post-high school program. But what we believe is the really key factor in there, as we talked about before, is real work in real companies. That's the only way to get training for any of us. Any of our internships would the same way we would for everybody. But what we try to do is we talk to companies. It's to educate companies. We don't just want to, so part of our program as they come through their normal day is we on-the-job training, everything from working in graphic design, IT, office work, to factory distribution, all types of jobs in different types of companies, because depending on where you are and what your interests are, we sort of try to match that up. But just as equally as we also have a soft skills curriculum that we've created with Montclair University, which includes everything you need to understand about being on the job, showing up on time, attire, how you deal with your coworkers and boss. But self-advocacy is really important, but also self-regulation and stress management. We all need that. I need that too.
Stress management, yes, I need that
anxiety
too.
And so those are, when I say soft skills, and communication skills, it's not just, it's really what you need in a workplace. But we also don't try to change people, autistic or, students. We try to help them and teach them what they need to be on the job. But at the same time, to make it successful, we believe we have to educate companies. So a big part of our profile and what we do is we go out and educate companies, their managers, their staff, and then just all of their employees. Because we are trying to say is, how do you create a supportive, empathetic workplace for all of your employees? And that'll make a better, more supportive environment for when our students come into your program. We talk about universal design and accommodations, that if you make an accommodation and you use universal design theories, then it could actually benefit all your workers. And so we sort of talk about that as not to be scary. It's not these, wearing headphones if there's noise. It's not, it would help maybe some of your other employees if you're in a big open area. I can't work in a big open area with a lot of people talking.
That's
so
a good point.
It's like there's many things we try to take away, try to inform and give them an understanding, help them to be mentors. So when we come on there, it's not just our job coaches that are on site and work with those schools as well as post-high school. The idea is that we at the same time educate the companies, because it takes both to create a supportive, empathetic workforce. And we say is that we don't go in as a charity program. I go in and we talk to them about the benefits. There are benefits to doing good, social, everybody's interested in social conscious, CSR, corporate social responsibility, but it's also doing things that are good for your business. And, we talk about autistic individuals are eager, hardworking, dedicated, focused. They just need opportunity, they need training, and they need to have employment. And so we go in at that, sort of that level of giving them the understanding of what benefits they get, and talking about high attention to detail, repetitive task, intense focus, low absenteeism, high retention rates. So we'll talk about all these business benefits as well as a social good, but being socially conscious is also good for your company. So we try to go in from that focus and give those education, and then bring it together so that our students could stay in our program from 14 or up to 16 and then to 21. And then the idea is that they learn these jobs, they can learn transferable skills. So when they graduate, they could either be hired into these partner companies if there's a position available, and they want the job, or they can find we help them find jobs elsewhere that are closer to maybe where they live.
Fabulous.
But they've learned transferable skills. The same way, none of us, our first job is the job we probably have now. No. It teaches, but it taught us a lot of things, how to get along with our coworkers, how to show up on time, being productive. So it teaches a lot, whether it's with our partner companies or elsewhere. We feel that it's a real benefit. And we go back to that same thing, start as young as possible, gives the most opportunity to be successful when you graduate, not just finding a job, but keeping a job long-term.
Oh, that's terrific. And you know, you had mentioned that they have so much to give in terms of dedication and showing up on time and really wanting to do their best for that company. And also a lot of people on the spectrum are twice exceptional. So when you don't hire somebody that maybe has a neurodiversity, but is maybe, you know, flies way above the curve in an area that your company needs, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a win-win in those cases. And I think as long as they can get behind maybe some of the eccentricities and the things are difficult with communications or emails and those things, and they can focus on the gifts that somebody on the spectrum can give to them. I mean, it's terrific. I love hearing about what you're doing. I know that you also have some online virtual programming going on with Spectrum Works. So do you want to say a little bit about what you're doing online?
Sure. We actually went the day after everything closed. We had our remote platform up, and it really gives us an opportunity over the past year to go outside of New Jersey. So now we have students in California and Massachusetts and
Yay!
New York and various parts of New Jersey that are more that are further away from us, that not in our northern. You know, we're right now we're a lot in northern Jersey, so it's really given us an opportunity, and we were up very quickly to getting our students on board. And what we do is it gives them the opportunity for real work. So we're teaching them computer skills, IT, video conferencing, but how you know all the etiquette that's involved in all of that. At the same time, we're giving them real work, so they're learning how to do data entry and how to do internet research and graphic design, things that are still able to do virtually. So we're sort of teaching them those things, but at the same time, we're those soft skills and communication skills that, because now people are home, that's for all of us, it's a struggle. And so we're able to have small groups together, which gives people an opportunity to interact with others, which I think is really important. And that continuity, we have very small groups, even our job coaches, it's still very small, one-on-one and up to 1-on-4. Mm-hmm. And it really gives them an opportunity throughout this, the COVID, is to keep in touch, to have somebody who's there checking on you often and who's helping you with those work skills, real work, practicing the real work, learning all the 21st century skills, which are remote learning, remote work. We're all going to be doing it in the future at some point.
Remote health, right? Remote health.
Everything. And so it's, as long as you can, teaching how to get on a computer, interacting in a virtual environment, working in teams, those are all skills, but real work, and then allowing time for all of those soft skills. We've included some meditation in there, just so people
that's
sort
great.
of calm,
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So we found that, we have a lot that's been happening, but we work with the high schools, a lot of high schools, and also post high school, as I said, but we charge schools for our services, but we also have a program grant that we've gotten where we're able to work in underserved schools. Oh, so that's really been a great opportunity to, even through COVID, to offer services to schools that still haven't really opened up in underserved areas, and to work with them throughout this whole thing so that they were able to have a connection.
Well, you know what? I love that you're doing that, because a lot of these companies and organizations are going to keep some sort of a virtual arm, I think, to their business, or work in a hybrid situation after everything that's happened. Mm-hmm. Everybody sort of had a scramble to get used to this online space, right? So are you planning to keep these online programs for students throughout, even once we're mostly opened up?
Yes, we definitely are. And as I said,
you're reaching more people. You're reaching, maybe somebody will be inspired in other parts of the country or even outside of the US to do something like this. I mean, you're really doing a good service for the high school administrators and educators as well, because sometimes they get kind of caught up so much in just having the autistic person be able to, focus and get through curriculum. And now you're helping them, teach them, here's the next step when you leave here. I mean, that's the piece I think that's been missed a lot. And that's why I think your organization is so important. If somebody's listening who has a company who wants to be a partner, what are the first steps for that? How do they get involved with your organization?
They would contact our office, which would be, they would put you in contact with me. I'm usually the first person who goes out and speaks to companies. And so they could reach out to Ann Marie at spectrumworks.org and or call our office at 201-552 201-5.
Does it take a long time to sort of get that whole thing on board? In other words, they're going to be a partner with you, but you have to figure out which students you're going to place. And I'm sure there's a lot to it. It's not just boom and it's up and running, right? So, you know, can companies that maybe aren't in your immediate area still work with you or work with you maybe virtually? Is there any of that going on?
Yeah, so we're trying right now. So right before COVID, we were having our expansion. That's what we were planning to do. So right now it normally happens is I'll have a conversation that I'll present what SpectrumWorks is, what the program idea is, and then I'll ask them what their motivation is. What is your interest? Because it helps to understand where they are in their process, why they are interested in it, and then we'll try to identify. The next steps would be identifying departments and job types that would be suitable at their company and what that would look like. So we can go to the next step, which is then we talk about, you know, is it a high school program that you're interested in? Depending on the type of industry and the type of job would lend itself, whether it's a high school internship program, or we're starting to work with universities to have university internships, or just post high school that they have those types of jobs. So when I talk about like professional level, I mean, if it's like an IT level job or accounting and those type of jobs, it's a different program than it would be for if they're looking for things that a high school student, any high school student without an education, college education yet, would be able to do as a first step to learning. As we said before, our first jobs were not the jobs we ended up at today. It's a learning experience. So it's sort of identifying what those job types are, those departments are that they're interested in, and the type of level of professional versus a different, so non-professional, meaning
so it sounds very individualized. You really work with the current environment of the company and try to see where the best fit is and what the best is going to be, how it's going to be a win-win for both the student who's just learning to get into the workforce and the company itself. That sounds really terrific. Anything you'd like to share with us in terms of, you know, upcoming or current fundraisers or events that you have planned?
Sure. In between, I'll tell you something else, just because it's the why of we're fundraising.
Yes, absolutely.
We've had in the works probably since late 2016. It just took us a while to get our first fundraising for the idea, but it's a very large IT platform, which is a separate organization owned by SpectrumWorks. Together with Seeded, which is the Center for Discovery and Innovation, which is part of Children's Specialized Hospital and Robert Wood Johnson. And Children's Specialized Hospital, they provide services to over 10,000 autistic individuals. And so they have, their interest is in the social determinants of health and jobs. The right job it could actually have really good health benefits. So we started to work together on an IT platform, and that ecosystem that we've started to build is to provide education, inspiration, practical tools, and connections to each other, to this ecosystem, to increase employment opportunities for autistic individuals. And the stakeholders are companies, high schools, universities, service providers like a SpectrumWorks all over the country, individuals and caregivers. So that ecosystem, providing programs and informing and educating and providing all of this ecosystem, we believe is one way, in a more practical, because you can leverage the whole country at the same time if you build an IT platform based on what we've learned. And so we have already started building it out, and we are now fundraising for phase 2. So that leads to answer your question as to what we are fundraising for. Right now, we've started Team Spectrum, And we are just launched it as an IT platform, not an IT platform, an IT fundraising platform, so that we could have people who want to join, because it's COVID time, so not a specific physical event, but people can do virtual events. They can go to do a 5K, they can do a cycling event, they can do a birthday party for themselves and have the gifts sort of, donated to Spectrum Works, or any idea that anybody would have, and they could join and start their own team and then get people they know to help to fundraise for this. It's a national project. Okay. So no matter where anybody is in the country, it's not specifically that we're just looking for Spectrum Works. Here in this local, this IT platform will be national and hopefully international someday. So we have MTS Logistics. They're doing a bike ride for us. They've already started raising money. Theirs is a physical event, but the rest we are envisioning that it's going to be, people could start their own or join something and fundraise as a team.
And I think people love that too, and they can put their own creativity into something because it feels like more their own, how they're helping, so that's good that you have so many options. That's terrific. Well, Ann Marie, I'd like to thank you so much, not just for sponsoring our special issue this month, but also for everything you're doing for the community and the education you're giving to companies, to high schools, and to those on the spectrum so that they can live happy, healthy lives. Thanks so much for being here with me this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And I'd like to end, as I always do, by wishing all of our listeners and our readers good health, happiness, and continued inspiration. Thanks so much for joining us.